Solar panels dominate the renewable energy market, which is worth trillions of dollars. The average residential panel converts only 20% of sunlight into usable power. A competing technology has existed for over 150 years, achieving nearly 70% efficiency. It was buried, not because it failed, but because it could not be metered and sold. In 1866, at the Paris Observatory, Augustin Mouchot unveiled a machine that seemed to defy the logic of his age. Using a parabolic trough lined with polished mirrors, he concentrated sunlight onto a copper tube, generating enough steam to lift a 3-liter load of water in under 2 hours. French newspapers marveled at the spectacle, a device powered by nothing but the sun's rays, producing a steady flow of steam, 150 kilograms per hour, enough to run a small piston engine. A decade later, Mouchot scaled up his vision. At the 1878 Universal Exposition, he assembled 5 massive troughs, each 5 meters long, focusing sunlight onto boiler tubes. The contraption did not just make steam, it ran an absorption refrigerator, producing 12 kilograms of ice every hour. Fairgoers queued for a taste of solar-chilled ice cream, and engineers took note as the system filled a small bar with ice, all from the miraculous fire of the sun. The French Academy of Sciences awarded Mouchot a gold medal for industrial solar heat, and the apparatus was photographed for the Musée des Arts et Métiers. Across the Mediterranean, Frank Shuman pushed the idea even further. By 1913, on the outskirts of Cairo, he built the Mahdi solar irrigation plant. 42 parabolic troughs, each 8 meters long, lined up in the desert. These mirrors focus sunlight onto steel pipes, boiling water at over 200 degrees Celsius and generating a torrent of 6,000 gallons of steam per minute. The plant powered 4 150-kilowatt dynamos, driving electric pumps that irrigated 100 hectares of farmland and supplied the Cairo-Alexandria Railway. Contemporary reports called it a miracle of the desert, and the Egyptian government invested $30,000, a massive sum at the time. Neither Mouchot nor Shuman relied on rare materials or billion-dollar factories. Their machines ran on simple geometry, glass, metal, and sunlight. The results were undeniable. Concentrated solar thermal could deliver real industrial power, decades before silicon panels existed. The question was not whether the physics worked, it was why this path, proven in ice and steam, faded from the energy story. Silicon solar panels operate under an invisible ceiling, set by the physics of how they work. Every photon that hits a silicon cell has to have just the right amount of energy to knock an electron loose. If the photon is too weak, it passes through untouched. If it is too strong, the extra energy is lost as heat. This is the Shockley-Queisser limit, a hard boundary that caps the efficiency of single-junction silicon cells at 33.7%. No matter how perfect the manufacturing, no matter how ideal the conditions, a silicon panel can never convert more than a third of the sun's energy into electricity. In the real world, the numbers are even lower. The best commercial silicon modules installed today top out at 20 to 22% efficiency. That means nearly 4 out of every 5 watts of sunlight striking a rooftop panel are wasted, mostly as heat that simply radiates away. The rest is lost to electrical mismatches, wiring, and inverter conversion. Laboratory cells, under tightly controlled conditions, have crept up to around 26%, but this is still far from the theoretical ceiling, and nowhere near what is possible with the full spectrum of sunlight. This is not a flaw in silicon or a gap waiting for a better engineer. It is a law of quantum mechanics. The electrons can only do so much. The rest of the sun's energy, the vast majority, slips through their fingers. Meanwhile, the heat that silicon panels shed as waste is exactly what parabolic troughs capture and use. Where electrons hit a wall, heat flows freely. This is the physics that makes concentrated solar thermal a fundamentally different, and in many ways superior, approach. The question then is how that heat can be concentrated and put to work without running into the same dead ends. A parabolic trough turns sunlight into concentrated heat with a precision that borders on alchemy, but the principle is pure geometry. Imagine a long, shallow curve of polished metal or mirrored glass, shaped so that every incoming ray of sunlight bounces toward a single line, the focal axis. Along this line runs a receiver tube, usually made from steel or copper, coated with a selective black oxide finish. This coating is no ordinary paint. It is engineered to absorb over 95% of visible light while shedding only a fraction as infrared, driving the tube's surface temperature far higher than bare metal ever could. The real magic is in the numbers. With a concentration ratio of 10 to 20 times, the trough gathers the energy of a dozen square meters of sunlight and funnels it onto a pipe barely an inch wide. The result is that the fluid inside the receiver can reach temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius, hot enough to boil water for steam engines or drive absorption chillers. In commercial systems, a vacuum glass jacket surrounds the tube, suppressing heat loss from convection and radiation. This simple upgrade pushes thermal efficiency into the 60 to 70% range. That is 3 times what the best silicon panels manage on a sunny day. At the heart of the system, there is no semiconductor, no rare earths, no fragile electronics, just sunlight, reflection, and heat, moving through metal and glass. The concentrated energy can be stored as hot fluid or molten salt, holding on to the day's power for use after dark. This is not just a collector, it is the sun's own engine, scaled for the backyard or the power plant, and built from materials found in any hardware store. Molten salt tanks do not just sound futuristic, they solve the oldest problem in solar energy: how to store the sun's power until you actually need it. Unlike batteries, which lose capacity with every cycle, molten salt holds onto heat with round-trip efficiencies as high as 95%. In practice, this means that nearly all the energy captured during the day can be dispatched at night, or even after a cloudy spell, with almost no loss. The chemistry is simple. A mix of sodium and potassium nitrate melts at a few hundred degrees Celsius and stays stable for thousands of cycles. Commercial plants use this for grid-scale storage, but the principle scales down. A backyard system with a small insulated tank can keep water or salt hot for days, ready to boil, cook, or drive a steam engine long after sunset. For those who want to build their own, the numbers are refreshingly honest. Silvered mylar film, the sort sold for emergency blankets or party decorations, reflects about 85% of incoming sunlight. Shape it into a parabolic trough, add a black-painted copper pipe at the focus, and you can hit fluid temperatures of 200 to 250 degrees Celsius on a clear day. $100 worth of materials covers the mirror, pipe, frame, and a simple tracking motor. The overall efficiency, how much sunlight you actually capture and turn into usable heat, lands in the 15 to 20% range for a homebrew build. That is not a lab miracle, but it is enough to boil water, sterilize tools, or run a small absorption chiller. The difference is dispatchability. With molten salt or even plain water in a well-insulated tank, you control when the energy is used, not the weather, not the grid. There is no inverter to fail, no lithium to degrade, and no proprietary software to lock you out. If something breaks, you fix it with hardware store parts. For anyone chasing real energy independence, the tools are already in their hands. Governments and industry leaders did not abandon concentrated solar thermal because it failed in the lab or the field. They walked away when the economics changed. During World War I, funding for solar research evaporated as war ministries funneled millions into oil-fueled logistics and artillery. In Britain alone, £3 million set aside for solar experiments was diverted to munitions. The US War Department halted all solar pumping trials, switching to gasoline engines that could be deployed instantly. When the war ended, global oil output doubled, and gasoline crashed to just 0.04 pounds per gallon. Suddenly, running a steam generator on cheap oil cost less than maintaining even the most efficient solar trough. Policy documents from the 1920s spelled it out. Coal and oil were the backbone of national recovery, not sunlight. As oil became the default, the logic of the energy economy shifted, favoring business models that could scale, meter, and control electrons, not heat. The physics never changed, but the profit equation did. And with it, the future of solar thermal slipped quietly into obscurity. The Andesol complex in southern Spain stands as proof that concentrated solar thermal isn't just a relic of the past. Each day, fields of parabolic troughs gather sunlight, convert more than 60% of it into usable heat, and store that energy in molten salt tanks. When night falls, turbines keep spinning. Andesol delivers electricity hours after the sun sets, a feat most photovoltaic systems cannot match without expensive batteries. For homeowners, the math is equally persuasive. A small parabolic trough, built for around $100 in materials, can provide thermal energy at about 3 cents per kilowatt hour, 10 times cheaper than running a typical electric heater. The payback period for a backyard system lands between 2 and 5 years, with almost no maintenance and no need for rare parts. Storage losses are minimal. Molten salt or well-insulated water tanks retain more than 90% of their heat overnight. The technology scales from industrial to personal, offering real independence from utility-driven energy markets. The numbers do not lie. Heat is both the sun's oldest and most reliable gift. While the world debates solar panels, thermal systems quietly deliver up to 70% efficiency, repairable, storable, and off-grid. The real barrier isn't physics, it's profit and policy. For anyone seeking real energy independence, heat isn't the alternative. Heat is the answer we were never meant to rediscover. What's your take?